Hey, it's Elizabeth D'Alto, and this is the Untamed the Wild Soul podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untamed the Wild Soul is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. What's up, wild ones? Welcome to episode number 176 of the Untamed the Wild Soul podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth D'Alto, and before we dive in and I tell you all about today's amazing guest, Lisa Lister, I want to invite you to join me for Wild Soul Summer School if you're listening here in real time. Wild Soul Summer School is a free 10-week series that I've been doing over on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Elizabeth D'Alto. The purpose is to take a deeper dive into some of the biggest, hottest topics that come up here on the podcast, the things that you come into the Facebook group and ask me the most questions about, the things that I notice the women in my programs tend to get the most stuck around and need the most extra help and guidance around. So it's really just some fun times that we get to spend a little bit more time together and learn a little bit more, go a little bit deeper. And for each free session, free video, I also create a blog post and some kind of free download for you, whether that's a checklist, a worksheet, some journaling prompts, charts, something to help you really implement and integrate what you're learning and go beyond just consuming content here on the podcast. So the most recent session we did was on how to trust yourself. So if you go to untameyourself.com/trust, you will find the blog post, you'll find the download, you'll find the video there, and you'll also find links to all of the previous sessions. So check that out if you're interested. And now for today's guest. I have been anticipating this interview for a while, and it did not disappoint. My sassy friend Lisa Lister is back on the podcast today talking about loving your lady landscape, harnessing the power of being a woman with a cyclic nature, and why we need to reclaim the word witch. Lisa has written 3 books, Code Red, Love Your Lady Landscape, and Witch, all 3 of which have had a massive impact on my life. So not only is she a friend, I also consider Lisa a mentor as well. She's my go-to maven for embracing the full experience and wisdom of the menstrual cycle. And this woman speaks the bone-deep truth, which means not skirting the darker, more taboo aspects of anything. We talked about patriarchy in this interview, sisterhood, self-care, and debated whether or not consistency is all it's really cracked up to be. So enjoy this one. The show notes can be found at untameyourself.com/episode-176. You can find links to Lisa's website, any of the books or other resources that we mentioned there over at the show notes. This is a really, really juicy one. So buckle up and let's get started. Yes, this is a moment I've been waiting for a long time. Lisa Lister is back on the podcast.
Yay!
Hello, how are you?
Hey, beautiful. I am good. Really good. I'm so glad to be back. Thank you for having me.
Oh, hell yeah. So for those of you who have not listened to Lisa's previous episode, we'll link to it in the show notes and all that stuff. What I'm so excited to chat with Lisa about today is her most recently published book, which is called Witch. Now, Lisa, before we dive in, even though you answered this question before, because it was like almost 2 years ago, I think, when you did. Yeah. What are you currently loving most about being a woman?
Now, I don't know what I said last time, and I did want to check. Before I came on to make sure. I was like, I want to check this out, but no. But, and I didn't know if it's changed or whether this is what I said, but for me right now, it's this ever unfolding journey of my menstrual cycle, showing me this map of what it is to be a woman in this body, this lifetime. So with each, so from that moment of menstruation, my first period, menarche, right through to the moment when I stop bleeding and step into my crondom, step into that kind of power of full knowledge of what it is to be this woman. I get to unfold every single month, and every month I'm learning something a little bit different about myself. I mean, that is good shit.
It's good shit. And I am so appreciative of you because
I had become curious about that and read a couple other things, but it wasn't until your work that I was like, yes, this woman is packaging it up and speaking it and delivering it in a way that I really can receive. And, you know, my own self, same thing right now. It's so fascinating to me because I was going to ask you, like, what day are you on right now and what's going on in your cycle? Because I'm on day 8. So, like, I just stopped bleeding 2 days ago and I'm having that, like, surge of energy. Of course, yesterday coming out hot right out of my bleed, I decided to do something a little riskier than I usually do. And it's okay. I have the energy for it. If I were to have done that, like, during my premenstrual phase or during my bleed, like, I couldn't have. I wouldn't have had the energy.
Exactly. And you've got the energy to hold it, right? Like, whatever that was, it's like you can hold that because you're like, yep, I can take risks here. I can do that. So I am day 13. So yeah, ovulating. Ching, ching.
Man, that's great. Do you have a favorite phase of your cycle?
Yeah, but it changes. Like, well, I think when I was first discovering this work and when I was writing about it, I loved the premenstrual phase because I'm a Scorpio. So the premenstrual phase is that, like, time when you come into yourself, when you come into the darkness. It's a real feminine phase. It's also the phase where you get to be, you know, the kind of rebellious part of you, like your tongue is sharp and you can be like quite feisty, and then you almost got the permission slip to own the feistiness, right? It's that real untamed nature that you speak to so beautifully. And it's like so that was like it, because I was like, that's the part of me that I'm really discovering. That's the part of me that I'm reclaiming. That's the part of me I want back. And so I was really exploring it and loving it and wanting everyone to love on that phase, because it got a hard time. It's like autumn, you know, when the leaves fall and everyone's like, oh, it's a bit boring around here, isn't it? Because there's like no leaves and it's all like a bit, it's all a bit brown. And it's like, no, like I wanted people to love it. But then now I think I'm starting to explore the other phases a little bit more. So before, ovulation was really bright for me. It was like almost too bright. It was like, oh, it's too, you know, the sun's too bright. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be like this visible. Yeah. But I think, just doing this work over the years, I guess, has meant that, like I feel cool in owning that time. So I actually am starting to enjoy this phase now. And just like really, I mean, I spoke to it a lot in my book Code Red. Like, yeah, it's a really good time to get shit done. Like, it's a really good time to be in action and socialize. But to really use it for that, I've like, it's been a game changer. So yeah, right now, I'm loving this time. And like, I'm like, yes, Elizabeth Dialto, can we do our call today, please?
I love it. We nailed it. And it's so funny because, and I love the way how life supports this, like unbeknownst to us, because we had to reschedule for today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So good.
Absolutely.
So I love that you just mentioned that, because something I had jotted down a couple things that I did want to talk to you about. And one of them was visibility. Because I know writing your book, Witch, and we'll get into the contents of it a little bit, but that was a big deal to put yourself out there as an authority. I'm not claiming authority, because I don't think you were doing that at all. But by nature of writing a book, by being an author authority, that is a big thing. And I know, because we're friends, that it was not easy.
No, it was not easy. So, it was really, really bloody hard.
Yeah. And like, can you just share like that experience? In what ways? Because we have women listening who, you know, some are moms, some are entrepreneurs, some have blogs or platforms or podcasts themselves. Some don't have any of that. But, you know, we live in a world where, you know, it's ever inviting for women to like speak up and get in their power and own their truth and use their voice. And so on whatever magnitude or scale people are doing that, this conversation applies. So go for it.
So I think the book itself, like if you're going to, you know, for one, the word witch is potent, right? So some people have like preconceived ideas of what that is, thanks to the media, thanks to patriarchal society, thanks to lots of reasons. And then there's the fact that I am a hereditary witch, which means that, I mean, it means nothing, and it just means that I'm from a family of women who were gypsies. And so my mum and my nan were both witches, but they would never have said that out loud because there was so much fear attached to it.
Right.
And so I and like and so they're both no longer in their bodies, which is why I think I was able to even write the book, because actually if they were here, they'd go batshit crazy. They would like literally be going batshit crazy at me for one saying it out loud in public, one sharing what I share in the book, because it's controversial. Some of it's controversial, and some of it's about our heritage, and so there's a very secret. I think, like for my mum and my nan's generation, it was a very secretive thing. It was a very, the fear was still real, and for so many of us now, that fear, that wound, that like witch wound, is still so potently strong. Now then, there's a whole nother generation though who are like really cool with using the word witch, who can like do a pretty Instagram feed and like curate this so beautifully and say, yeah, I'm a witch, and like I've got tarot cards, I've got my sage stick, I've got this, and it's all good. And so for a while they pissed me off, I'm not gonna lie. Because
that's actually in my note too, because that pissed me off for a while too.
Okay, cool.
We'll get to it.
And like with total love, I can speak about that now. But I think before it was like, are you kidding me? Like, that's my heritage you're playing with there. Like that, like when people do the gypsy soul thing, when people do that, I'm like, dudes, this is my heritage. And you try being this one. You try going to school and being called a pikey. You try dealing with that stuff, you know, and real. Before we kind of just wear the really pretty headdresses and all the like nice flowy clothes. So that was the bitter me. I'm working on that, people. I'm work in progress around that. So there was definitely some of that. But I had to write the book because that fear piece had to stop with me. Like, I was an egg in my mom, in my nan's womb, right? So the wounds that she was carrying, I'm still carrying. Yeah. I have to stop that now.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm called to do. Now, again, I say this about the blood work. I say it about all the work. This is not what I would have chosen to do. This is not what I would have signed up for, people. I would have much liked to have been having a very nice life where I sat by a pool most of the time. But I get it, and I get what I'm meant to do. And so that's why I wrote it. And if it doesn't cause like, and so anyone that's writing a book, anyone that's called to write a book, if it's not causing some like movement in your body, Elizabeth Soto talks about this so beautifully, about like how we have to be in our bodies. The book speaks to this piece beautifully of how we kind of disconnected. So many of us are disconnected from our powers because they've been put in the dark. Yeah. They've been put in the dark, and then we've been taught to be afraid of the dark. So that fear piece, like about me talking about that, is because my nan and my mum were too fearful to speak about it. But I live in a time and a place where, for the most part, it is safe for me to speak about this. Yeah. For the most part, I'm still experiencing some of that, and that's okay. That's again the point of the word. That's what it evokes in people. So yeah. So
can
tricky.
you explain what you mean by witch wound for those who are listening who might be like, what's she talking about?
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So when I speak about witch, so it's not like a 101 witchcraft book. Witch is about us claiming our power back as women. Yeah. So it's about us remembering and reconnecting with, and then reclaiming, and then having fierce reverence for the experience.
Okay, so pause there for a second. Fierce reverence. So important. Yeah. I'm going to write that down, and I'm going to bring it back up when we get to the part about how you and I similarly judged the people with the flower crowns and the sage and all the appropriation
which
things.
I have your love. I do.
It's okay. I've love for it now. I had a lot of judgment for it before. Okay, keep going. Totally. Fierce reverence.
Yeah. So that's what I mean when I'm speaking about us kind of looking at what being a witch means, which is this wise woman, which is what all of us were before we forgot, which is what all of us were before patriarchy came in and disconnected us from our power source, which is the space between our thighs, right? So it's that womb space, it's that power, it's our a whole lady landscape. It's just everything that was revered was no longer revered. And so this is where the big remembrance is coming in now. Like we're seeing like an uprising of women talking about sisterhood and like the divine feminine rising and priestesses and all of this good stuff. But we need to understand the roots of it. And so for me, the roots of it are witch, because people find that still very hard to speak about. People would perhaps, like in the book, I speak about one of my clients who was like, can I just say I'm a healer? And I'm like, yeah, of course you can. You can say whatever you want. But until we start getting okay with the words that have been taken from us, you know, like the words that have been, like that word was a word that explained, you know, it's from the old word called witcher, which was the wise woman. That's all it was, and that's everything it was. You know, the woman that we went to find out how to deliver babies, to get a herb tincture, to, you know, it was that simple, and that was turned into something really, really evil and sinister, because patriarchy got really scared of our power, because they couldn't figure out how this thing could make milk, could make a baby, then feed it from this one being. You know, that freaked them the fuck out. And so I think I had to write the book now, because we need roots, all of us, and we need to tap into our own roots before we start talking about rising, before we start saying like, okay, let's go up here to this part. We need to kind of get these roots really fully grounded in.
I love this so much, because I did one module of a yoga teacher training a couple years ago, and there were two terms that stuck with me. I'm like, did I just pay $900 to learn these very two simple concepts? Maybe I did. One of them was spanda, which is like expand, contract to expand. That's super applicable here. And then the other one was root to rise. And I'm like, duh, obviously, like we can only rise as high as we're rooted in and down. And how do we get our roots? And so this comes back to the fierce reverence thing for like, reverence for like that there's a lot of mystery around all these things. We're talking about these things based around like what we know and what we've seen and it's sensed evidence of in our own lives, and like a lot of people around us. I know you've done a lot of study and spent time with a variety of types of witches and healers and shamans and priestesses and therapists, like the full range, right? Coaches, exactly. All the things.
Yeah, all the things.
Many shapes, shades, and forms of witch. And I have as well. And this is one of the reasons why I loved reading your book, because like you've studied in places where I haven't. And one of the things that I've had so much reverence for is actually lineage, right? Like I don't necessarily have a lineage. I'm kind of creating my own lineage because so much of what I'm doing, so much of what you're doing is breaking the lineage of everything that's taken place up to here. Like by healing those wounds, it's kind of, how do we heal the lineage? How do we break the lineage? If we're going to be healing those wounds, it's kind of freshening up the lineage or something. I don't even know if that's the right way to articulate it, but by leaving that one piece of it behind and like healing it or doing the work to heal it, it kind of brings a newness to it. But but at the same time, holding respect for the roots of the thing. Like, none of us are making any of this shit up from scratch, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we all need to remember. Like, and so in the book, I suggest that you look to your own heritage, for example. So for me, mine is Gypsy. So I can look to, and I'm blessed that I've got, you know, some like recollection and some records of what my nan and my mum practiced, for example. But if you haven't, then like look into the land that your feet are currently on. And then if not, so then I guess what you know, what Elizabeth was saying, what I'm saying as well, is that it just all comes down to respect, because you might be totally drawn to Egyptian, you know, you might be totally drawn to like the goddesses Isis, and you'd be like, yeah, I'm all into that, but like there's nothing about you that's Egyptian, right? It's like that's a real calling for you. Like follow those breadcrumbs, follow them. But just have fierce reverence for the path and for the people who that's indigenous to as well, because that's where stuff's starting to get a little bit messy for me, for example. Like I even in the book I speak to all different kinds of traditions and practices, And then yesterday I got an email from someone that said, like, Lisa, that's not how it is for me. I'm practicing, what she was practicing, and that's not how it is for me. So she's going to write and so I said to her, cool, like, I haven't got all the answers. Like, that's based on what I knew from the people that were sharing with me.
Yeah.
Like, and this is what it's about, is it's about us creating conversations, and it's about us going, right, okay, like, how is this for you? Because we're all going to mess up. We were both talking about this before we got on the call. Like, we're all going to mess up as we explore this path. And so we have to call each other in and not call each other out. And that's what I loved about the email, was like, she was like, just like, this isn't how it is for me, Lisa. I'm like, cool, okay, well, like, thank you for letting me know. I want to learn more. Like, the readers will clearly want to know more. So like, let's write a blog about it, and let's have an interview. Let's share that story.
I love
and
that.
we want to know how it is for everyone. Like, I'm not claiming to have the answers. In the book, I'm like, question everyone, question everything, question everyone that calls themselves a teacher or a guru. Question me. If you love the book, good, still question it. Like, I haven't got all the answers. Yeah. And I think that's where the fierce reverence comes in, is like, really look into what you're doing, but then have reverence for the indigenous people who are living that.
Yeah. So it brings it back to, I realized that's where my judgment was coming about for the people who want to just like wear the accessories and call themselves witches or priestesses or whatever. What I was sensing, what was really bothering me, was the lack of reverence.
Yeah, totally. And me too. And it wasn't until I wrote the book that I started to understand like where that's coming from.
Yeah.
And it's from a place of curiosity. Like, there's so much available now because we're living in a time and a space where we can have so much access to all of this.
Totally.
And if you're waking up in your spirit, on your spiritual path, then you've got access to all of this incredible knowledge and gnosis. And it's like, what can I follow next? And it's like, slow down, like, tune into this one, tune like right into your belly, and then trust where that one takes you. Like, go down into your womb space and trust where she takes you, and then like let yourself be led, as opposed to just like wearing an eye of Horus without even knowing what an eye of Horus means. Like, it's just stuff like that. That's all. I mean, that's my pet hate, is like, or having a tattoo and not knowing what the tattoo means, for example. But that's
Yes. And I love what you said in the book, where you said, and you know what, regardless of anyone's intentions, if you're going to adopt or appropriate something, or proclaim your curiosity for it, you're inviting in an initiation that's unavoidable anyway.
And that's where I got to with it. And that's where I've got to with it. Because, even writing this book was a whole initiation for me. And anybody that's been on a spiritual path will know, hopefully, because if you don't know, you will know, that the initiations will keep coming. And so, if like, for one, claiming the word witch, that'll be an initiation all of its own.
For the rest of your life.
Freaking
Good luck to you.
And in the best way and the worst way as well. You take all of it. You take it all. So
I joke all the time that my choices to use the words like wild soul and untamed in my work are like, it has signed me up for a very particular path in life. And so how excited I was when I saw on the cover of your book, it says unleashed, untamed, unapologetic. And I also was like, oh damn, I hope she buckled up for that.
Yeah, I'm in for that. I'm buckled in, and I'm doing it for a long, long time. I don't think.
Snap, it's happening. So more acceptance, less judgment is what I came to. Like, I have no idea what someone else's path is. I don't know what they're here to learn, who they're here to help. So honestly, I just need to mind my own friggin' business.
Exactly where I got to. And it's like, it's beautiful that we can have this conversation as well, because for so many people, they'll be thinking like, I'm not allowed to think that, or like, oh, you must only think this. It's like, no, I felt that, I worked through it, I moved through it, and now I'm in a place of like, just keep your nose out, Lisa. There's nothing to do with you.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with me. So it's like I think I might have said this on the podcast, but at some point recently in like my musings, I was thinking of that term, which I think it's an Eleanor Roosevelt quote of like, someone else's opinion of you is none of your business.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, my opinion of other people is none of my business either.
Yeah, just stick in your lane. Just get in your own lane, Elizabeth the Alto. Jeez Louise.
Totally.
Me too, though.
So, and here's the thing that I love so much, like that you've done the research, and in this book you laid out just like the full spectrum. Like some people really connect to the earth. Some people connect to the moon and the stars. Some people connect to the sun. Like there's all these different things. And actually my last new moon ritual full moon rather, that I did, I was in Hawaii. And something that I had been curious about for a while, that again, you just put it simply in your book that I could work with, was around like calling in the directions.
Yeah.
And I've been really interested about the elements. So this is where I've taken my little research into, and I'm already into like my astrology chart. So I just looked at, okay, what are the directions? What are the corresponding elements? What are the corresponding colors? And then outside of my ritual, I was like, cool, where are all these things in my chart? Like what element correlates to what sign, and what house is that in my chart? And I'm sharing this for people listening going, this is like the evolution of a person going down the rabbit hole.
It's so true.
With the intention of just geeking out and like continuing to land on what resonates, ditch what doesn't. Because there's plenty of things I've done and trained in and studied that I don't practice anymore. Like Reiki is one of the best examples. Like I did all the way through like master level Reiki attunement, and I never use it.
I hear you.
And it served its purpose though at the time. I learned so much through that study. So what's and where I got overwhelmed, so I want to speak to this too and ask you about it. Where I got overwhelmed is where you started talking about the garden and the tinctures and like this plant and that herb, and I'm like, I'll spend $500 on fucking herbs and I probably won't even use them, Lisa.
It's so true. Rabbit holes. Because it cools though, and I just think you don't need to spend £500, but you can go play, right? Like you can go get a few and try some teas and try some fun things. And if it feels good for you, like you say, if elements are the thing, then you go there. And there is no right way to do this. And like, I hope I made that super clear in the book. Like there is no right way. Cool, because it's like that's the most important thing. Is like there is a lot of kind of structure around how to be a witch, and that for me defeats the whole object. It defeats the whole object of how it is for me and how it is for the work that I feel that I'm here to share, which is about women trusting themselves again. Like it's about us remembering the power that we've got inside ourselves. Like we are medicine women. Like if we trust ourselves, we know which herb to pick. Like we know which prayer to say. We know where the moon was. When we're in sync with her, we understand that. It's like that's the magic, and then you can do whatever you want. Like that's
and it's
that
so
for me
true,
is the power.
Because I'll share with you all, there's so many things in my life that I have not scheduled by checking in with the moon, but that perfectly lands in the right phase or the right time or the right whatever. And my only explanation is like there's a higher part of me that knew.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Because these things that seem random that work out. And here's the thing too. Some people call this confirmation bias. I'm choosing to go, oh, look at that, and make meaning out of it. And it's a meaning that makes me feel more connected to who I am. It makes me feel more connected to my spirituality, to the divinity around me, and to like the universal support system that I believe exists. And so, maybe you feel that way too. Maybe you don't. People listening, I know Lisa definitely does, but it's just cool.
Little break in the show to let those of you who are listening in real time know that we open enrollment for the Wild Soul Movement virtual program this Friday, July 7th, 2017. I am so excited. Wild Soul Movement is one of my favorite things I've ever been blessed to be invited to create. It is a sensual movement practice that combines movement with mantras and meditation. We use these mantras to help override and deprogram the non-helpful, unuseful thoughts that run through your mind all day. We use sensual movement to help you connect to your body and actually enjoy inhabiting a female body and learn how to connect with your body's unique language of the senses, release things, navigate the waves of emotions and thoughts and all kinds of things that go on in your life on a daily, weekly, monthly, and annual basis. Wild Soul Movement is designed to be something that you can use and come back to over and over and over again, depending on what's going on with your life. There's 4 main topics: surrender and release, trust and receiving, wild dreaming and desire, and love and creation. And it's designed to help you become the living, breathing embodiment of feminine truth and power. And there's no one way to do that. This is your feminine truth and your feminine power. How do you access that? This is what we do in the program. There's an amazing, supportive community of women from all over the world who help each other through things like navigating relationship stuff, getting new jobs, expanding, shining, telling the truth, having courageous conversations. It's a really beautiful thing. It's a really beautiful space. And this year I'm also updating the program with a couple new video lessons, some extra guided meditations. We have monthly Q&A calls that happen in our Facebook group. It is beyond. So if you want to be part of something super meaningful, a program in self-discovery and personal truth that is designed to meet you exactly where you are and take you where you want to go, in spite of being a group program, it's very much designed for the individual to flourish and thrive. Head on over to wildsoulmovement.com/waitlist so you could be the first to know when it's available. And if you're listening after July 7th and the gates are already open, you can head on over to wildsoulmovement.com/join to find out all the juicy details and specifics and to actually just sign up. And one more thing here, if you sign up between July 7th and 10th, I've got some early bird goodies and bonuses for you, including some extra private group calls with me and an entire bonus course with some body attunement and energetic practices to boot. So head on over to wildsoulmovement.com/waitlist, or if it's after July 7th, head on over to wildsoulmovement.com/join. And for those of you who decide to enroll, I cannot wait to meet you inside the program.
So what are you studying? Like, what are you dabbling or not even dabbling in? What are you in the rabbit hole of right now?
The power piece. Like, so writing the book, like the power piece came up for me, like so strongly. It's like, so I did a ritual, and I speak about it in the book, like when I reinitiated, because I went through a phase of ignoring the fact that I was a witch because I wanted to follow boy bands and I wanted to kiss boys a lot. So I was like, I'm not into this whatsoever. And just completely turned my back on it. But when I reinitiated, like I took myself to the White Spring, which is in Glastonbury, which is like a really beautiful place here in the UK, super steeped in all sorts of incredible mythology. And the White Spring is really beautiful, and it's like a well, and the well energy means quite a lot to me. So I immersed fully into this well because I wanted to take back some of the power that others had taken from me regarding like this lifetime, many lifetimes taken from us as women by drowning us as witches. And so I wanted to take that back, and I didn't drown. And like what came up for me was that, it's safe for me to be powerful. And that's what so many of us forget. And that's what that witch wound really is. It's like all of those things where we're told we're too much, we're not enough, like we're too loud, we're too this, we're too that. It's like, really, like, what does power look like? So that happened. And then I was writing the book, and then everywhere that I've retreated with women, where I've taken groups of women and like sacred groups, sacred lands, and like I get them to hold each other's hands, and we call back our power. And because every time all of us do it, and I invite every woman, anytime she's in a circle with other women, like I call back my power now, and then we call back our power now, and then just start to really feel what that feels like in your body to own those words. Like, I call back my power now. Like, no, like tomorrow or maybe next week, like now, like, and demand it, because we've got every right to freaking demand it. Yeah. And then to really, so that's what it's been for me. And then to understand what power means in a feminine respect, in like what it means to me in this body, for example, as opposed to like the blue eyeshadow and 80s style shoulder pads that I've been told to believe is power, or the kind of competitive power that so many of us, and I've definitely experienced. And you know, when we're going to talk about sisterhood, for example, you know, that piece is massive. You know, we talk about this sisterhood, we talk about like holding hands with our sisters and how beautiful that is. But the reality of that is not true right now. You know, it is for some, and it looks great on Instagram, by the way. Thanks for those who post those pictures. But what I mean is, like, it's not real, not right now. It was not the real experience for me anyway, not all the time. Like when I'm in circle with women, yes. But in reality, when I'm going about my daily business, when I'm going about sharing this work, other women are calling me out all day long. So we've still got work to do. So for some of us, it won't feel safe to be powerful. So that's why we have to keep saying, and we have to keep supporting each other.
And that's that Sponda thing again, right? Sometimes we're going to expand out, spread our wings, be seen, and like be in our power. And then we're going to go, and I need to close up shop again, so that I can come back out and do that again later, maybe a little bigger, maybe a little brighter, maybe just like before or even less. But it's like, I think sometimes people get down on themselves because they think once I'm in my power, I'm like forever in my power. And like, not really. Like there are times when we feel like wildly powerful and times when we feel like I'm exhausted. Where'd all the power? Did I use all the power? Like, do I need to plug this thing in and charge it? Or like, what's the deal? And probably yes. So I want your opinion on something. I was having a conversation with the women of my mentorship last night on our call. And it was this conversation about like the fear versus the power, the fear versus the faith and the trust, right? And so, you know, one of the things that I pointed out is that when we feel overwhelmed, whether it's by our own power, whether it's by the tasks ahead or the perceived intensity of the work we have to do, whether that's in the world or on ourselves or whatever, we can't feel overwhelmed when we're fully resourced. So I'm really curious about your attitude, beliefs, perspective, opinion, whatever, on self-care. Because I feel like self-care is something, it's another really pretty fun thing to talk about on Instagram. And I think I certainly know what I feel self-care really is and what it isn't, but I want to know what you feel.
Yeah, it's a bit of a buzzword, hey? I think what I've experienced is that my self-care looks like paying attention to my cyclic nature. And I don't just mean my menstruals, like I mean like to the seasons and to plug in back into what is real for me. And that is true for a lot of women too, is that we live in this world that tells us we have to work 9 to 5, that you know, that the days look like this and the hours are this and this is what you should work and this is how it should be. The reality is, if we plug back in, you wouldn't need the word self-care. Like if you plugged back into like the turning of the wheel, you know, the turning of the wheel of nature, the turning of the wheel of your body, like specifically your body, like this is one, you know, your menstrual cycle is one big self-care tool. Like it's the biggest self-care tool you can give yourself because of what you were just saying. Now, we talk about power. Like in my ovulation, I can be like, yay, look, check me out. Like I can do this. Like I can chat to you about this. I'm hopefully a little bit more articulate than I normally am, you know, and there are things that I know about myself that I can do super, super well in this phase. So I utilize that. And that's for me has been like the biggest self-care tool, is because I know like come in a week's time when I'm in my premenstrual phase, you know, don't check Amazon, don't go on social media because you will be triggered. Like everyone will be triggering you.
I can't be trusted for what might come out of my mouth while I'm in my premenstrual phase.
Yeah, and that should be like one big poster that we put out there. I can't be trusted.
Sorry for what I said in the 2
sorry,
weeks
not sorry,
leading
though.
up to my bleed.
Yeah. But sorry, not sorry, because that's your truth. That's
right.
And that's what we realize. So I think I hear you. Like I think it's going to take a lot, and you know, and people have a very interest. You know, a lot of women have a very interesting relationship with their period. But when you start to really tune into her, she will guide you. Like that's what she's there for. She is our power source. She shows you where your hot spots, where your power source are. I mean, where your power days and your power moments and your skills and your all of that good stuff. And so if we can tune into that, you won't need to go, oh, I have to schedule in 10 minutes to meditate, or I have to do that, because your body will tell you what you need. Like she would have said, like, lady, don't go running a marathon because you're day 28. Like, that's a stupid idea. Like, you need to rest, you need to do this. And she will tell you. And that's how we start to begin again to trust our intuition, which is like the very essence of what being a witch is, trusting this one, the one that's in here.
And what's cool too is it comes up again that's also self-respect. It's respecting like your nature, like how you're actually made, and realizing so much of what we have taken on and shamed ourselves for as women in our efforts to conform to a patriarchal culture and like the systems and how things are done and have been done is so hard for us, because it really goes against our nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I speak to the sorceress in the book, because the sorceress for me is like the source. Like, you are tapping into source. And so you self-source. And so instead of self-care, it's self-sourcing. And so you become this sorceress because you are able to figure out your wants, needs, desires, pleasures. And you know them intimately. And more importantly, you listen to them and you meet them. Like that's got, those things have got to start becoming non-negotiable as you become a powerful woman. If you're going to be a leader in the world, which the world is calling us all up to be as women, to lead this rising, then we need to be sourced. And again, we said before, to be sourced, you need to be rooted. So you need to be tapped.
And you bring up such a good point. Actually, the timing, of course, is amazing. I posted something on Instagram yesterday about like moving my body and feeding my body in alignment with my values, not my insecurities. Because for how long did I think my body needs to look this way, my value is in this, I need to be attractive, and this is what attractive means, so blah, blah, blah. So I need to eat this and work out. And, I used to be in the fitness industry. And that is so funny. Like, there was just a point at which, as I was waking up to like this whole other aspect of what it means to be a woman, I was like, oh, I can't do this job anymore, because this job was created out of this system that says, woman, there's something inherently wrong with your body if it doesn't fit this tiny list of what this culture says makes it okay. I'm like, actually, like, I'm willing to be softer. I'm willing to have more cellulite. I'm willing to be less muscular in order to actually be feeding my body what feels good in my body and what's aligned with what I actually believe about life and the world and things like that. And the same with movement. Like, I just literally haven't even been able to force myself to move the way I used to with any kind of consistency.
Yeah.
There's like a couple, like this phase, like after my bleed, when I get into like that spring phase and I'm like, all right, I can go lift some weights and like do some workouts. There's probably like 4 to 6 days during my 28 that I'm like, all right, I'll lift some weights. Let's go do some sprints. And then other than that, I'm like, nope.
But that's what it comes down to, what you said, consistency, right? Yeah. We've been told that consistency is the thing in business, in life, in relationships, in this. And it's like, again, it's for me, it's a tricky one, because I see the benefits of like how consistency creates something, but also the consistency is that you're cyclic, right? Yes. So that's the only consistency you have to worry about. You don't have to you don't have to show up the same each week. Like, you can still get super fit if that's what you wanted to do, but know that, like you say, there are a couple of days where you lift weights, awesome, and then there are a couple of days where you go running, and there are a couple of days where you do some real nice yin yoga or something. There's a couple of days where you kind of nourish yourself and like lay in bed and watch Netflix. There's all of those things. And that's all available to us, and that's self-sourcing. So it's beautiful.
So, all right, I want to ask you about something else.
Okay.
Something I talk about a lot is, and I've changed my views, like since the beginning of the podcast, people who are longtime listeners have probably noticed that this narrative has shifted a bit as we discuss it now from where it is before, but the idea of masculine and feminine energy. And there was part of me that was like, like, it's hard for people to get into the energetics of it when it's so tied to these words that are so associated with gender. And my current stance is this: I trust us. We're intelligent. We got this. We can separate the two. Because regardless of someone, how their gender identity, their gender fluidity, some of you listening know, I'm still learning the terms. I think I got this right, but let me know if I messed it up. Every single human has both masculine and feminine. And so what I've been much more interested in lately is actually looking at the healthy expressions of masculine and feminine and the unhealthy expressions of masculine and feminine. And I recently put together a little form, a little worksheet where I made a chart, but I'd be super curious, what would you kind of list under, and I'll walk you through them so you don't have to remember because I'm now making this very long-winded question.
I like it.
How would you describe, if you had to like bullet point, what's like, let's start with unhealthy. What are expressions of unhealthy masculine energy by your opinion or definition?
Yeah, and again, though, I don't want to be like totally fluid about this. Yeah. Like, so for me, for example, like an unhealthy one would be competition, but I also appreciate, like, and that's a very competitive nature, is a very masculine energy, but sometimes necessary. So I get it. And like, it's what you just said before, like, I'm happy to go through these, but like, I think we just need to get super clear that it's like, you've got it, like, you understand, like, so it's like, we got to trust ourselves to really explore it. So for me, it would be competition, because I see how it comes up, and I see how it manifests in some people, and how it feels in this one when I feel those triggers. And that for me feels very masculine when I'm in the feminine part of my cycle, for example. So I really experience the what feels quite unhealthy for me in the feminine energy. So and that's probably where it will come up for people. And when you're in the masculine, so like for me, some of those feminine traits, like the softness and the tenderness, that like, I haven't got any time for that in the first half of my cycle. That just like freaking annoys me. Like, seriously, like, come on, people, I've got stuff to do. Like, can we just hurry it on? Can we get down to the business? Like, do we have to have an hour meeting about this? Like, must we talk about this now? Can you just like send me an email with bullet points? I haven't got time. Like, so it gets a bit like that. Whereas, like, when I'm in that part of my cycle, like, I call that in, like, let's talk about it over tea. Like, let's just really enjoy it. But knowing that we have different times, and like you say, like, so there are different times and places for those energies and traits. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, okay, you got it. Well, I appreciate that, because I'm all about the distinctions, right? Like, perhaps it might be determined by where you are in your cycle, or what your relationship to that thing has been in the past.
Absolutely.
If competitive for you is unhealthy, like, if you're just like unable to be competitive without having to like demolish other humans, like, that would be unhealthy for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so they would all have their own, they would all have their own ifs, buts, and maybes, I guess. So
exactly.
And that's what the cyclic work has done for me. It's meant that there are very few structures and boundaries, which is what I'm having to bring back in now. So I'm having to bring back in. So for me, I've gone so far into the feminine in order to do the work that I've been doing, that I have to invite in now some of those structures again in order to get anything done. Quite frankly. So that's been an interesting journey for me too. So, like, writing the books and it's been the only things that have been structured for me, like the work, like getting lost in the work has been so feminine that it's like, I've got no concept of what the masculine was in this one for a while.
You're so I'm having where is it? I'm coming back now.
Yes, I have to call some of it back in now.
So what's for you personally, Lisa, when you feel I'm in my feminine but it's not healthy? What does that look like?
See, that's interesting, because I don't actually, like, because I have been so in it, like, I think it's all glorious. Like, I'm still very much of the opinion that everything, but I know that's not true. Like, there's a darker side to it. And so, like, getting, okay, let's have a think. You might have to give me a little bit of time on that one. That's such an interesting question. I know, I love that.
Do you want me? I don't want to sway your answer, but do you want me to share what some of like my ideas of this are? So I consider spiritual bypass to be unhealthy feminine.
Interesting.
I consider like manipulative behaviors, because it's like it's very emotionally tuned in and very communicative, which I think is very feminine. But so it is kind of, the unhealthy is synonymous with like the shadowy or the dark. This is like when keeping it spiritual goes wrong, you know?
Yes, I love that. That's exactly it. That feels, Yeah, that feels good in terms of, yeah, women
It's essentially
using
like, am I using my powers for good,
good. Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. Yes.
or am
Okay,
I
that's so
abusing them?
interesting. Oh, I'm going to go think about that some more, though.
Cool.
I
I
really
love
love
it.
that question. I don't know why I hadn't. I think, like I say, I'm in a place where I am so into the
I
gloriousness
love that.
of the
Well,
feminine that I'm like,
and
oh,
also
but you're
for
right.
people listening,
Mm,
this kind of shows, and this is part of my point, this is part of my grand plan. I believe that we actually need, and this is the healthy masculine, the structural and the
yeah,
foundational knowledge is like the roots, like you were talking about earlier.
yeah,
Once you get the basics down, then you actually don't need the labels or the terms because it's just integrated. It's just who you are. You're just in it, like you're describing. And in fact, language itself is a masculine structure.
yeah.
And so putting words to things that are very felt and very inherent and very embodied is challenging, and it's cool. This is actually right here, live on the show, we're seeing that Lisa Lister walks her freaking talk because she can't even articulate it because it's just felt. It's embodied. It's in the body.
And also, though, I think you just know as well, like, so then it comes down to the trust. So I also know that
Yeah.
I have been too much in my feminine. So I'm able to call myself back and go,
Yeah.
right, yeah, I need to welcome in a little bit more of that at the moment. And so that's when you know you're on a path, right? Like, that's when you
Yeah.
know, if you're bypassing that, I would just stay in that space. And I see so many people doing that, and that's the deal. And that's why we've got to get to a place of knowing this work, like knowing our cyclic nature, knowing how, like, reconnecting with the source and our source,
Yeah.
so that we're able to trust it.
Yeah.
And then we, like you say, because I say in the book, like, people talk about spells and they're like, oh, how do I write a spell? Like, I mean, of course you can write a spell. Like, I mean, there's books that, I've got a few on the shelf, but like, a spell is what's felt through you and your intention. And so you trust that. And then it's all about beginning to, trust in your body, trust in your own inner cauldron. You don't need the accessories.
I love it. The inner cauldron, the accessories. And if the accessories make you feel like more of yourself,
Yes.
use the goddamn accessories.
I love the freaking accessories. I love them. I'm just saying, you don't need them.
Yeah, I
but
agree,
yeah,
I agree,
absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah, totally.
And we go through
I love them.
phases. And actually, I have had a couple women in my community recently say, I feel like I'm disconnected from my spirituality. And I wonder if the disconnect is actually, you don't need the tools and the implements, or perhaps you're phasing out of needing this to feel connected, and you just are. Right?
Love.
Who knows? Or maybe it's just like, maybe there is a phase where it's like, I don't need to talk about it so much. I don't need to be as proactive. I could just like simmer. I've gone through these phases where after doing a lot of like, quote, work on myself, I'm like, cool. Do I just get to be the person now? When do I get to just do that?
It's so true. I wrote that book and I was like, seriously, I've done now. So surely I'm done now. Like, I have got this shit down. Like, no, of course you haven't.
No.
Took me out at the knees when I handed that book in. So yeah, haven't got that stuff sorted out. But you're right. You're totally right. It's play, and be playful with it as well. Like, this spiritual stuff doesn't have to be as heavy as everyone's making it out to be.
No.
Let it be fun. Let it be playful. Let it source you. That's the point. Like, you're a sorceress. Let it source you.
So we live in a world, you and I are fortunate in the sense that we are, whether it's courageous, stupid, or whatever enough to be rebellious and say, I'm not going to, or stubborn. It's probably a lot of stubbornness, I have a hunch, with you and me specifically. But to go, all right, I'm not going to do what everyone else thinks I'm supposed to do. Some people have that in them, but they're in places right now where they're still in the structure. And this is what the book is for. So I feel like for a lot of people listening, a book like this is gonna be a pendulum swing, like so far out of like your comfort zone. And the point isn't that you need to go be like this, but it's so that you can have that pendulum swing and then see what works for you and where you land in the middle. But do you get a lot of women in your community who are like, that's cool, Lisa, but I still have to go to my 9-to-5 job, or I'm still taking care of 1 to 3 kids or however many at home.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of structure in my life that I wouldn't necessarily choose, but I can't get out of it.
Yeah.
What do you say to those women?
Well, it's just the knowledge. I think the important bit is knowing what you're capable of, knowing your power. Because if you're going to those jobs and thinking that's it, then there'll be something in you that feels unfulfilled, right? There'll be something in you that's pulling you, that feels uncomfortable, or like that your body's asking you to do something and you're not able to hear it. So therefore, like for me, for example, when I was much younger, I was doing a job that I loved, thought was the best job in the world ever, but actually I was completely disconnected from my body while I was doing it, so that I could do it, which meant that she, or that is universe, kicked me in the ovaries, like literally. I got endometriosis, got PCOS, got everything that made me come back down to here and pay attention. So what I mean is, if those things are showing up, then it could be a call to pay attention. And so all I ask is that you don't have to be doing life like us. That's if that's your calling, then you're going to get pulled there. Like, you're not genuinely, sometimes you don't have a choice in that. Right. But if, like, you're a woman waking up to this knowledge, you're a woman, like, you might read the book and you're like, whoa, that's like, I didn't know that about myself. Then get curious. That's all. Like, all I'm asking, or anyone I think should be asking of themselves, is to just get curious about what is good for them in their bodies. I love that. So of course, like, you can know your menstrual. I mean, my menstrual cycle is my spiritual practice, because it's the work I do. It's what I share in the world. I get that, but then for a teacher, for example, like, just knowing that you're on day 28 will mean that you have to cut yourself some slack before you go into a classroom, for example, right? You know that if you're going to ask for a pay rise, wait until about day 14 of your cycle. Just knowing your cyclic nature will help you show up in your daily life a whole lot differently, because that world out there is a patriarchal one, that's still very patriarchal, that's set in a very distinct way, that doesn't want you to be connected to your cyclic nature. That's where we're at.
Super great. And I think I'm a big fan of anything that allows anyone to have more compassion for themselves, better understanding of themselves, and to be able to give themselves some leeway when they're unable to show up the way they think they're supposed to, or culture is asking them to. So I'd actually love for you, it's a term we've used on the show before. I don't know that I've ever had anyone actually define it, or if I've ever defined it. What are you talking about when you say patriarchal or patriarchy or that culture?
So it means a lot of different things to a lot of people, but for me, it's when we've been okay. So Elizabeth alluded to it earlier that I don't speak from a very like soundbitey space, because everything comes from my belly. So I'm just trying to
say whatever you want to say.
Words.
This is my show, so you're safe.
Yay. I just think, for me, in terms of the work that I do, patriarchy looks and feels like it's so difficult, because this book took me out at the knees when I wrote the patriarchal chapter. It just literally took me out. So I'm still trying to, because I want to find what it means in a way that doesn't diminish dudes. Like, that's the most important part for me, is that I don't want it to be read in a way where it sounds like I'm man bashing, because I'm not. It's to do with structures that were put in place in order to keep, I believe, to keep everyone, not just women, just keep everyone compliant, because they wanted us to be compliant. They wanted to turn the mystical into a machine, and that's not. And so what was, like, in pagan communities, for example, across the globe, like, that the mystical was the mystery. Everything was being celebrated, and actually, when people believe in themselves, when people trust this one, they're not going to listen to somebody telling them what to do. They're going to be that untamed that you speak so beautifully to. They're going to be that. And so patriarchy was a set of structures put in place so that we became docile, we became compliant, we become infantilized. right?
You got tamed. I was actually I have your book. I was trying to flip to the patriarchy chapter real quick to see if I could bail you out and read what you wrote and see if I had highlighted anything.
It's good, right? It's good that we have these conversations, and it's good that people don't think I've got it all together either, because I haven't. I mean, I've written this book. I haven't got all the answers. If people claim to have the answers, it's because they've remembered them from somewhere. We have to feel those answers. We have to truly feel.
This is such an important point. So this is something, people have heard me talk about this before. This has been a really, talk about initiation. Living in a self-proclaimed conscious spiritual community here in San Diego, where I've been for the last 2.5 years, has been fascinating to realize, and this is not a judgment, this is a straight observation, and I'm sure I've been here myself, of how many people have the knowledge. They've done the studying, they've read the book, they've gone to workshops, they've got knowledge, they've got vernacular. They're more conscious and they're more awake. That doesn't mean that they're practicing. It doesn't mean that they're embodied. It doesn't mean they've integrated all that they know. And I think we often give people the benefit of the doubt that they've got it because they could speak about something. So what I love about you, it's kind of like the opposite experience. It's so embodied. You're like, I'm having a little trouble articulating this because it's just in my freaking cells. Yeah. I'd rather run into that all day long than the frigging cosmic tricksters / spiritual narcissists who can say all the right things and behind the scenes, they're not living or doing that shit.
And that's been the hardest part of this journey for me, full stop, I think, like in having to be someone that speaks out when speaking out is not my chosen path at all, but it's what's being called on me all the time. And I think there's a reason for that, so that we can start changing the conversation. Maybe the conversation is even the wrong word, but start changing the way we show up around this, because I can go and read a book and I could go and I could have written bullet points from this book and I could have shared them with you. I could do that on any time anyone asks me for this stuff, but it doesn't feel real. It's in the same way I can't run a course more than once, and people get really cross about that. I'm going to try and practice that, but that's not really what I do. But that's how it is for me. That's not necessarily how it is for everyone. Totally. I get that.
And I really appreciate too, though, the patriarchal culture, the patriarchal mindset is pointing out that men as a species do not benefit from patriarchy.
No,
a section of them do, right? Yeah. But it's not. So when we say this, a lot of people do throw the term out, and there is vitriol towards men in general. Yeah. Lisa and I are not doing that, because we do realize that there are a lot of men who wouldn't choose it either. And this is interesting, because I've recently been speaking a lot more about race and privilege and stuff like that, and to just acknowledge that some of us are getting to benefit from these structures and systems or whatever. It's called, I've seen some people call it an unearned advantage, right?
Interesting.
It works in the favor for some people while simultaneously oppressing others. And I think that's what we're trying to be let's have that. Let's flush that down the toilet, for the love of God.
Totally. And that's the deal. And that's when we're talking about these structures, these things that have been put in place to keep us all that way, to keep us all in competition with each other, to have us all, and that's the big deal. They've got us all turned on each other, especially women, turn the women on each other. They sit back, patriarchy, the structural, Donald Trump, he's a poster boy for this stuff right now, right? So it's they sit back and smoke a big fat cigar while we go at each other. They don't have to do, we don't have to. Yeah. They don't have to do anything. And so that's what I think that's how I really speak to it in the book. Is this is some of the stuff we have to look at, the way that we treat ourselves as women, the way that we speak to each other, the way we kind of interact with each other as men, women, all different kind of gender fluidity, and everything is we're all gonna mess it up as we're trying to figure it out as well, because as those patriarchal structures start to crumble, because the anesthetic's wearing off, that patriarchal anesthetic that we've been under for 3,000 years plus is starting to wear off, because we can see it. Donald Trump, for example, he's super visible with it all, and then we can all just
he's a very efficient package of so many of the issues being like, hey, everyone, I just wanted to let you know what's really wrong with this country and the world right now by exhibiting a lot of it in one ridiculous human package.
Exactly. So with that, we can see that it's starting to come because we're like waking up. That's not cool.
This is actually not
like
okay.
That's not okay. That's been happening behind the scenes for so long.
Yeah.
Wait up. So we then start to question, and so with that, we're all going to start feeling into ourselves and be like, when we start taking some of that power back and we start using some of it, then obviously it's going to cause some friction. People don't like that. That's not going to work so well. And so, it's, we have to dance with it. It's a dance, we really have to dance with it. And we have to, like I said earlier, call each other in, not out, because that's where that's how we can move forward.
Big
definitely.
Time. I feel like because you're sitting in front of your bookshelf and I'm such a nerd, I know you don't read while you're writing, but you published a book a while ago. So are you reading again?
Yeah. Oh, what am I reading?
Yeah.
Oh, controversial. So this big bad boy, and it's a tomb, but it's called Female Erasure.
Oh.
And it's like what you need to know about gender politics, war on women, the female sex, and human rights. Now, I've just started it. Yeah, right? I mean, there's a fiction on the go as well called Hot Mess, if you want to check that out. It's like a Bridget Jones for modern times. So I like to keep it super all into polarities. This is heavy, but my God, some of the stuff. And I don't know whether I agree or disagree with it. And I love that. And it's really causing a lot of questioning in me. And that's what it should all be about. This is we question ourselves, we question it, and
and we change our minds.
Always, all the time.
Always. I saw, I don't often even remember to go into iTunes to look at my reviews, but occasionally, every couple months, I'll be like, oh yeah, there's a whole other place to go look and see what people think about me. Let me go check that out. And I'm pretty good at being able to be whatever, the good or the bad, it's all whatever. Sure. But there was someone who called this a liberal feminist podcast and said that it's sometimes hypocritical. And I'm like, I could totally see that because I'm constantly reserving the right to change my mind, discovering new information, deciding I feel a different way about something I used to feel a certain way about. And it's called Untamed the Wild Soul. So shit's going to happen.
And that's what I mean. What world are we living in if we can't change our minds? If we can't read something or be inspired and go, wait up, that's awesome. I'm into that. Thank you for sharing that. Thanks for changing up something in me. Yeah. This is where we're at now. And I get it. But I'm excited that you're a liberalist contradiction. I love that. Is that what you said? No, I've just made that up. That's
a liberal feminist. I'm all right. If that's what it means, that I want people to be treated fairly and equally, and I want women to know, love, and trust themselves, then put the labels on me because that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I'll take it. Take it. Thank you very much.
Lisa, I don't want to hang up. I love you so much. Never. I've missed you. I know that. What are we on? An 8 or a 9 hour time zone difference. I wish it was easier. We're working on trying to figure out teleportation.
Yeah, we're on it.
We're on it. Maybe we'll, among all the other things we've discussed today, maybe we'll figure out teleportation.
I mean, right?
No,
surely that picture behind you is some kind of portal. Surely, look at that. We can go in there, surely.
Oh my God, you're right. Amazing. So thank you so much. Everyone listening, we gave you the link to the show notes in the beginning. So if you want more Lisa Lister in your life, you want to check out all of her books, you could just go to Amazon and type in Lisa Lister. The website is it thesassyshe.com?
It is, yes.
It's thesassyshe.com. You can follow her on Instagram, the Sassy Lisa Lister. And then what's the name of the Facebook page?
Lisa Lister / the Sassy She.
The Sassy She. Cool. So if people can find you, you're in all the places. And
all the places.
I love following your stuff. There's actually a lot of my peers who I've unfollowed because it's a creative distraction. Yours is not a creative distraction. Yours is a total complimentary value add to my own life all the time. So I am a loyal follower of Lisa Lister myself. Highly recommend. Thank you so much. You are amazing. I always appreciate you. Thank you for being who you are in the world. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much.
it's important to know as well, we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So that is potentially 60 to 80,000 mean girl thoughts. So 60 to 80,000, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not whatever enough, you're not good enough, whatever it is. That's a lot, right? Men have around 40,000. So they have almost half the amount of internal dialogue than we have. So when you first start this awareness, you could potentially be mastering your mean girl 60 to 80,000 times a day. And that's okay, because the more and more you practice it, it'll get to 40,000, 30,000, 20,000. And then you have these long gaps in between that internal inner mean girl.
Yes.
Where there's just presence and bliss and love and joy. Mm-hmm. But the more you practice this, it's like any muscle, the longer those gaps in between become.